conflict regions, or people who in the free and fair world actually engage in activist or questionable or non-mainstream activities. These are the sort of groups of people that might want to use something like Tails. So I'm going to take it away with the slides. If at any point something doesn't make sense, something's not obvious, you have a question, please feel free to interrupt, raise your hand, and I will stop, and we can cover it. I don't want people switching off because I just said something that doesn't make sense, and they just think, oh, don't bother. Please do bother and ask during the session. So TAILS is an acronym. It stands for the Amnesic Incognito Live System. And I won't spend too much time on the T. Let's go to the amnesic part. What does that mean? It means that the system can actually say, sorry, I don't remember it, to anyone examining it after the fact, right? After it has been used by the person that might be scrutinized. So normal computer operating systems, things like Windows, Linux, Mac, etc., leave a lot of traces behind. Whenever the user does anything, open a file, browse the net, open an email, talk to someone on IM, there's a lot of traces left behind, either on the hard drive or on the computer memory. And with digital forensics methods, which is the science of recovering these traces from a computer, it's usually impressively easy to reconstruct the past on a computer system. So for my 9-to-5 job, I do digital forensics, and I'm still amazed at how many artifacts can be recovered, even for activity that was months back. You can pretty much, there are tools out there to tell you exactly what has happened on a computer system, down to details like where did the person being analyzed have their sandwich on a particular date, clearly which websites they browsed to, who they sent money to, who they talked to. Right? You can pretty much tell anything that has happened in a computer system. So Tails makes that extremely hard to do, this kind of analysis. So yeah, the canonical example is opening a single Microsoft Word document creates about 5 artifacts that I'm aware of. So 5 different bits that can be recovered that point to when that file was opened, with what program it was opened, how it was opened. Did someone double click on it, or did they go through Word and then file open? Right, it's impressive how much you can tell about exactly what happened. So Tails makes that really, really hard to do. Someone using Tails would leave no such traces behind. The incognito part, incognito means not exposing your true identity, hiding who you are. And again, why would we want to do that? Because right now, as other people have mentioned in sessions, and I'm sure you'll be hearing much more about that during the CryptoFest day, post-Snowden revelations, we know that there is wholesale, constant, pervasive surveillance on a global scale. The question is not whether you are being subjected to surveillance, because you might be thinking, well, I'm not a person of interest, right? I'm nobody. Why would someone be actively surveilling me? That's not the way things work nowadays, it appears. It appears that what happens is that there is a global, constant surveillance going on, and then analysis capabilities for all the data that has been collected if you ever do become a person of interest, which means that 10 years down the line, 30 years down the line, perhaps your children do something that the authorities of that place and time find questionable. The capability will be there to go back and dig up dirt. And people who think that they have absolutely nothing to hide and they can survive this level of scrutiny, even in contexts that are completely different than London 2013, right? Affluent society, everything is fine. Should talk to me after the session, because I don't think that this is the case. On a global context and in the depth of time that mass storage of your personal activities online gives you, it is extremely difficult to come out the other end of this huge lens and be spick and span clean, have nothing questionable. So I sort of preempted this slide. Why resist surveillance? Why take measures to hide your identity? we shouldn't really need to do this in a free society, right? There should be laws basically protecting citizens of the free world against this kind of thing. But right now, this is not the case. Right now, we are subjected to surveillance. So what this day is about is, it's a stopgap measure, really. It's using technical tools to kind of hide yourself. We shouldn't need to hide. I mean, why hide? We're not doing anything wrong, right? The problem is that the definition of right and wrong changes. There are some areas that are very fuzzy. You don't know if what you're doing today might be considered wrong tomorrow. And it's always wrong to be right too soon. As a Stanford University lecturer, I think, very recently put it, people who are sort of ahead of their times are always persecuted. The canonical example is someone like Martin Luther King, who was at the time under heavy surveillance by the FBI because he was a change actor, right? He wanted to subvert the system, and that is not okay. That's never okay with the system. It's a threat. It disturbs the regular, calm flow of things. No one likes that, particularly not the system itself. So people trying to subvert the system and create what I and other people call positive social change will be suppressed by a global surveillance system. If the capabilities of today's NSA, FBI, GCHQ, and all the commercial companies giving the tools to everyone who's willing to pay the right price existed back in the 60s, Martin Luther King's movement would never have taken off in the way that it did, because all of their internal communications, all of the organizing, all of their actions would have been known to their enemies, the system of the day, before they actually happened. So they would have been suppressed in a much more successful fashion. Luckily, that was not the case, and positive social change, disruptive change, was effective, and it actually did happen. This is becoming much harder to do nowadays, because the system, the regime of the day knows so much about what's happening, can surveil what people are thinking about, what people are talking about. They can preemptively arrest people, as it happened in London, actually. And I think it was, when was the royal wedding? Last year. 2 years ago. Sorry, I'm not a big follower of all things royal. But so there were some people who were organizing a little bit of a funny event on that day, which was they thought that it would be fun to dress up as zombies and go to downtown London and have something like a zombie anti-royal wedding gathering. It was a piss take, basically, right? In this society, this should be something that is allowed, because it's supposed to be a free society, right? You should be able to, without disrupting people's fun, without infringing on anyone's rights, you should be able to criticize things in a non-harmful, peaceful way. Well, what happened is that these people, and I'm not talking about riffraff or anyone who you would consider that the police would automatically be against. I'm talking about university lecturers. I'm talking about psychology majors, etc. I'm talking about affluent people. They were preemptively thrown in a prison cell for more than 24 hours, I believe, during the royal wedding day, because it was known to the police that they had communicated and they were organizing to this event that attracted about 5 people. I think they turned up in downtown Soho dressed up as zombies, with sort of funny signs having slightly anti-royalist messages, but clearly you should be able to do that, right? Criticism of the regime in a free society is supposed to be allowed. They got thrown in prison. They had done nothing wrong. They hadn't even completed their objective for the day, which is to have the zombie party, right? They were going to the zombie party, and they were arrested. So this is what happens. This is the sort of level of oppression that happens. Like, imagine if you can get thrown in a prison cell for more than 24 hours just for that. Imagine attempting to do anything that is actually against the best interests of the government, even in our free society. Now imagine places like Asia, places like Africa, former Soviet states. Imagine how important it becomes to be able to keep your privacy, to stop the government from surveilling you. The standard aphorism here that I've heard people use before is, give a man a mask and only then will he tell you the truth. If you know that the consequences of what you say are going to be dire, then you just won't say it. You will self-censor. So, the live part of Tails points out to the fact that you don't need to install Tails on a computer system. You can just run it off a USB stick like this, which is what I'm going to do in the demo part of this workshop, or you can just run it off a CD-ROM, which is even better because it's, by definition, a read-only medium, which means that nothing can change your Tails system while it is executing. Malicious software that is perhaps recording your keystrokes, or it's trying to figure out who you're communicating with. So it is theoretically possible to launch attacks against this, but this is not an advanced attacks session, so I'm not going to go into that. For all intents and purposes, for 99.99% of the case, using Tails on a system is the most secure way that you could use a computer that you haven't physically built yourself, which people don't tend to do nowadays. So to recap, Tails is very useful when your computer use might be scrutinized. So you think that a computer you use might then be analyzed to try to dig up what you actually did post-mortem, excuse me. Or your network activity might be scrutinized. So something that Tails gives you for free, as in something that is pre-configured in the system, is that all of its network activities, anything that leaves the system, goes through the Tor network. At this point, how many people have no clue what the Tor network is? No one, or are you just ignoring me? So you all know what Tor is? Awesome. You guys are way too advanced. What are you doing here? Okay. So all network traffic of Tails goes through Tor by default. So it's really hard to mess it up and expose information on the wire. It takes a little bit of effort. It can be done with Tails to actually expose information that goes out of Tor, but by default, everything you do is Torified, which basically means that you get a very good security baseline out of the box. You don't need to be a security expert. It just works. With that, let's do a demo, unless there are any questions. Anything else you would like to cover before we do the demo?
You mentioned it going on a CD. Is it small enough you could fit on a credit card sized CD? Or?
I don't believe so. I think it's about 700 megs, so you would need a real CD. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to reboot my system. And I'm going to start it with this USB stick, which I have installed Tails on. So this thing will go blank for hopefully less than a minute, but bear with me. The projector should come up once Tails boots. Okay, we are in business. Okay. So what you see now is a live Linux system booting, right? Tails is based on Debian, which is a Linux distribution. So the first thing it does is ask you if you want to just use it as it is, or if you want options, one of which I find pretty amusing. If you say yes, there's the option to activate Microsoft Windows XP camouflage. This option is there because if you're at an internet cafe, let's say, and you boot up something that looks like Debian Linux, people casually walking by will say, what is he using, or she? And basically draw attention to you. By using this option, you get something that looks as innocuous as what will come up in a few seconds. This. Which is a Windows XP system, right? Clearly.
Where's the blue screen?
Yeah, not yet. We might get one. You never know. I don't know if they've built in that feature. So wireless works, and I should probably connect it to the local network so that we get a meaningful demo out of this. Here, give me a second. There we go. So what happens in this network is that we need to authenticate to the network. So Tor will not really work out of the box. So I would probably need to start an unsafe web browser, which even prompts you a second time and says, do you really want to launch an unsafe browser? Because this does not go through the Tor network. I think I'm going to need this to authenticate against the university's Wi-Fi system. So once we do that, we should be good to go. So obviously you need to be able to restart the system to use Tails, and this is something that you might not be able to do. At internet cafes it might not be allowed, or you might not have physical access to the machine. In that case, it becomes really difficult to impossible to actually use Tails. But if you are using someone else's laptop or desktop computer, Tails is a very viable option. So, it warns us again, do not use this because it leaks information into the network and it's observable. So let's go to a non-encrypted website. Oh, interesting. Why will I not prompt it for authentication? Okay, so let's start a real browser. It appears that I'm already connected to the network, which I'm not sure why, because I thought I needed the cookie. Perhaps it remembers my IP address. So what the canonical web browser here will do, which also is masqueraded to look like Internet Explorer, but clearly it isn't, it automatically connects to the Tor network and routes all your web traffic through that. Since you all know of Tor and presumably have used Tor as well, you will know that it's generally painfully slow. The reason for that is that it bounces your traffic through a number of computers before they actually get the traffic actually gets to the public internet and your destination. But this is actually slower than normal. Okay. Green onion is always good. A green onion is a happy onion. It means we're connected to the Tor network. And it's always good to verify once you have started a Torified browser by going to this webpage, check.torproject.org. And if you get this, you're home free. In case I'm telling you everything that you already know, stop me. But it's important to be aware that you get an IP address, which is the network address of your computer, which can basically normally be traced back to you, to your physical location. You get an IP address that, as it says here, it appears to be this one, right? So this is the IP address of the last Tor computer that then throws my traffic into the public internet. And we can tell where this address actually is geographically. So we can tell where all of the browsing data of the session will appear to originate from. There we go. So we are right now in Sweden. Fantastic. So everything you do on this computer right now, not just through the browser, will appear to originate from my computer in Sweden. And for the record, we're not in Sweden. So what this does is it obviously protects your identity, it protects your physical location, right? Because if you know someone's IP address and if you know the time of date, you can always tell their physical location with an impressive degree of accuracy. So by using something like Tor, you hide this information. You make it extremely difficult because it's not really allowed to say impossible. We don't know that. But it makes it extremely difficult to trace back anything that originates from this computer back to you, to your physical location. So what do you get with Tails? You pretty much get a system with all the basics that you would need to get things done, like work with documents, or get your email, or go on instant messenger and communicate with people, right? So you have a number of applications here pre-installed, things like OpenOffice, let's say, things just work out of the box. It's quite hard to securely install extra applications. That would be quite slow and painful, but it can be done. Right, so you get your document editors, you can get multimedia applications in case you want to do extremely secure multimedia processing, but I have no idea why anyone would want to do that. And it's also possible to use the resource of the local computer. So you can tell the system, okay, I know what I'm doing, I actually now want to touch the local hard drive. Because by default now, everything that happens, everything I do, launch programs, open documents, generate internet traffic, it all happens within the memory of the computer that will be securely wiped once we switch Tails off. Nothing touches the hard drive. Therefore, no traces are left behind.
What happens if Tails goes down unexpectedly?
Then the memory is not securely wiped, and you can launch a cold boot attack that was mentioned in the last session, which means someone needs to really quickly have screwdrivers in hand, open up your laptop, take out the memory modules, freeze them, and then connect them to an analysis machine and steal data from there before it goes away. Right, it's unlikely, but it can be done. But still, nothing will be on the hard drive.
There's one the ability to modify the torque file.
Sorry, will you?
The TORC file, so you can set the exit notes, for example.
Yes, you do have that ability, and you can also use bridges in case you are operating in a country that blocks Tor. You do have that access. Sir?
So it does a software-based kind of on-die termination with the RAM, so it wipes all the RAM every.
At the end of the session. At the end of the session, yes. What it does is it boots a microkernel after the regular kernel that we're running now, the regular system is terminated, and it only does one thing, which is to wipe the RAM. So it tries to leave absolutely no trace behind, not even of the fact that Tails was executed on this system, because that's also a forensic artifact that is of interest in a potential investigation.
I have two questions. Is the runtime system encrypted or just clean? And is there any other network other than Tor and I2P?
I do not know the answer to any of your questions. I'm sorry. I believe that the memory is not encrypted, but I would need to check. And about other networks, you should be able to install other clients, but I'm going to have to check on what is actually pre-installed. Right. So I do see only I2P and Tor. Do you have in mind some specific other anonymity networks? That would be...
Maybe Hyperbole. I think there are not that many big ones.
There are not that many secure ones, basically. So people have gone to jail for using things like hidemyass.com or VPN services that have been proven to be completely insecure. So the Tails development team is very close to the Tor development team. In fact, there is some overlap. So they make pretty certain that nothing that could leak information about you makes it onto the Tails distribution. So there's a quite high standard for any software to make it here.
I missed how you booted into it at the beginning. Do you have to change the BIOS to like boot from USB or?
Yeah, you need to either change the BIOS or just tell it just this once boot from USB.
Right.
Is it possible to configure the image so it will boot into like Windows XP mode or something? So you can have all your settings.
I believe it is possible. So what you can do with Tails is you can actually install it on the system, right? You can install it on a hard drive, and so obviously you start with a new computer, right? You wipe the operating system, you install Tails, and then you can save settings like this. But obviously it tries not to remember anything that you did within your session, right? Or you can store files or other settings in encrypted containers. When it comes to customizing the live system to start like that, again, I will need to check on that. I'm not sure if you can change the ISO easily. I'm sure it can be done, but I don't think it can be done very easily. Anything else? So,
can you actually sort of create, say, an Office file, like a Word file, and put it on the desktop?
yes, you can.
And is there any encryption behind that at all?
There is no encryption. What happens is that the file system that appears to be in use now, so where our files actually stored, is in memory. So it doesn't touch the hard drive, right? So by securely wiping the memory at the end of the session, you basically do away with all sorts of cryptanalysis problems that you might run into. By default, it doesn't touch the drive, but it's a good question because I should basically show how you can create files here. You can save them. There we go. So we have a Word file here, or an OpenOffice Word file, that if I turn off the system now, or even if I yank the USB drive out and just power cycle the machine, just reboot it, the next time we start, it won't be there. And also, if someone analyzes this physical computer and the installed operating system there will be absolutely no trace of this file ever have been there, ever have been opened, existed, edited, saved. Just never happened. Right? So Tails gives you the ability to basically deny that things happened. And this is why the subtitle of this talk is "This session never happened." Yes, sir?
If I wanted to GPG encrypt that file, then how would I do that?
You would use the pre-installed GPG tools, OpenGPG, OpenPGP, obviously, which are somewhere around here. There is. How can we get a command line in this Windows camouflage thingy? Accessories. There we go. Yeah, I think you would need to use command line tools. So GPG is pre-installed, so you can use it in the normal way to encrypt things. The focus here is not usability when it comes to things like encrypting files, right? I do believe, though, having said that the standard file browser thingy does have some usability features. Let's see. There we go. Encrypt. So any file that you create or you access through a Tails system, you can use such options like encrypted, sign it with keys that you somehow need to get onto the system or generate on this system, right? Cryptographic keys, or you can wipe it if it actually exists on a medium that is worthwhile wiping. Wiping this address space in the live memory of the system now doesn't really make much sense. But if you attempt to encrypt it, it will ask you for, where are your keys? So you would either need to supply keys that you have created in another system at another place and time, or you would need to create your own keys. To talk more about this, we would need to go into how PGP works, which I would like to avoid because it's a rather complicated topic and it would take a while.
When you were talking about things that are left by the operating system, you're talking about the kernel looping traces. So, for example, with Tails using the Linux kernel,
yeah,
you have to disable the actual kernel features. Or is it in sort of the
When I'm talking about other system, as in any regular computer operating system leaving traces behind, I'm not just talking about the kernel, I'm talking about application software that leaves back traces. So for example, in Windows, opening a document, a Word document, leaves behind traces in the registry, the Windows registry, in multiple locations that are meant to help the user. So, you know, your recent documents, how does the system remember? Computers don't have memory, right? It only remembers because that has been recorded, that on that particular time and date, that user accessed that file. And if that happens to be in the 5 most recent or 10 most recent time and dates that the system has captured, it shows up in your recent documents list, which is a great feature, right? Usability, fantastic. But all that is recorded in the system and can be recovered forensically if someone were to analyze your computer. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
If someone wants to obtain a copy of Tails, how do you know that it's authentic and hasn't been modified in any way?
Excellent question, and I should have covered that in the presentation. So whenever you download, first of all, you can download Tails. Actually, I'm gonna, no, what should I have? We should have it here. So, news, fantastic. So from this is the main webpage, tails.boom.org, right? You can download it with this button, and you always need to check that what you have downloaded is actually the real deal, and it's not a version with some nastiness implanted in it, which has been done. How do you go about doing that? There are very clear instructions here about how do you verify the ISO image, so the image of Tails that you will download. There's also very good instructions. They have made a pretty decent job of providing documentation on exactly how to install it on a USB stick or on a CD-ROM drive. But before you do that, how to verify that what you downloaded is actually what the Tails developers published and it has not been tampered with. It involves verification of the cryptographic signature of the Tails developers. It's actually 12:30, so we should be wrapping up. Thank you very much.